Hey everyone, and welcome back to The Other Opinion. Today we are diving deep into Indian cinema with a fascinating and sometimes controversial figure, Anurag Kashyap.
Oh, yeah. He is definitely known for speaking his mind.
For sure. And we will be getting into all that.
Yeah.
We're going to be breaking down this really interesting interview he did with The Hollywood Reporter India.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. Have you seen it?
I have, yeah. It is pretty wild.
It is wild. I mean, he does not hold back in his criticisms of Bollywood, as it is popularly called.
Right.
But he also has some really interesting things to say about a different film culture that he sees as more authentic and vibrant down south in the Malayalam and Tamil film industries.
Right, and that is super interesting.
Yeah, so we're going to unpack all of his insights, explore his frustrations, and try to understand what this all means for the state of Indian cinema today. And as always, we want to hear from you, so hit us with your other opinions in the comments below. Do you agree with his take? What are your hopes and fears for the future of film? Don't forget to like and subscribe to The Other Opinion for more deep dives into complex and controversial topics. And if you were enjoying this conversation so far, why not share it with a friend who might find it interesting?
Okay, so to jump right in, what really struck me was how Kashyap traces his creative journey back to South Indian cinema.
Right.
He talks about how these films influenced him even before he consciously sought them out.
Yeah, it is really interesting, right? Like this early fascination he had with South Indian films seems to have come full circle. Later in the interview, he expresses a strong desire to actually move to South India and make films there. It's almost as if he sees it as a kind of creative haven.
Yeah, I can see that.
He even shares this anecdote about watching Upendra's film A, which apparently really surprised Ram Gopal Varma, who was also a very prominent filmmaker.
Oh, wow.
It just gives you a little glimpse into Kashyap's tendency to gravitate towards the unconventional,
Yeah.
even from his early days.
And this appreciation for the unconventional seems to extend to his admiration for the Malayalam and Tamil film audiences. He calls them discerning audiences.
Oh, yeah.
They are not just passive consumers of entertainment, right?
Right.
He sees them as active participants engaged in the art of cinema, appreciating films on multiple levels. And he contrasts this with what he sees as a more passive, star-driven culture in Bollywood.
Yeah, it is like he sees a real depth of engagement down south, a willingness to go beyond the surface and grapple with more complex narratives.
For sure.
He even talks about the organic growth of cinema clubs and traveling cinema down south. Like, how cool is that? And there's this great story about Adore Gopalakrishnan, who is like this legendary Malayalam filmmaker whose brother was actually named Godard after the French New Wave director Jean-Luc Godard.
Oh, wow.
Talk about a family dedicated to cinema.
Seriously, I mean, that is incredible.
Right.
It really speaks to a culture that values filmmaking as an art form, a culture where independent voices can flourish. And, think about all of these new wave filmmakers emerging from Kochi, like Liho Jose Pellicer, known for his film Angamali Diaries.
Yeah.
These directors are drawing inspiration from global cinema, but they are also staying rooted in their own communities and stories. And that authenticity really resonates with audiences.
And this kind of brings us to Kashyap's critique of Bollywood,
Right.
which is pretty scathing.
Yeah.
It is very clear that he is deeply disillusioned with the state of the industry. He talks about this cycle of filmmakers who were initially inspired by his own work, by his willingness to push boundaries, but who now seem to be operating within the very system that he criticizes. Right. And it's like he feels a sense of betrayal, almost, like a frustration that the industry has become more concerned with star power and box office numbers than with telling compelling stories.
And he connects this directly to the issue of inflated budgets and the stifling of creativity.
Exactly.
He argues that this focus on star treatment has created this environment where risks are discouraged and formulaic films are favored.
Yeah.
And he is basically saying that the art itself has become secondary to the business and the marketing, the whole spectacle of Bollywood.
The spectacle of it all.
Yeah.
And here is where it gets really interesting, right?
Okay.
Because he points out this irony that Hindi cinema is becoming more and more like the South Indian industry that it once looked down upon.
Oh, interesting.
Like, we're seeing South Indian directors delivering some of the biggest Bollywood hits in recent years. Films like Pushpa, The Rise, and Bahubali, are tapping into something primal, something deeply rooted in Indian storytelling traditions that he believes Bollywood has lost touch with. What do you make of that observation?
Well, I think there is a lot of truth to it. The success of these South Indian films suggests a shift in audience taste. This hunger for stories that feel authentic and connected to their cultural roots. And I think Kashyap is arguing that Bollywood, in its pursuit of commercial success and global appeal, has lost sight of that core audience, and perhaps even its own identity in the process.
Totally. It is like he sees South Indian cinema as this kind of mirror reflecting back Bollywood's own shortcomings.
Hmm.
Now let's talk about streaming platforms.
Okay.
They were supposed to be this haven for creative freedom.
Right.
But Kashyap argues that they have become just another risk-averse system, driven by subscriber numbers and algorithms. Is he being too cynical here, or is there a valid point? Let us know what you think in the comments below. And don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to The Other Opinion for more deep dives like this. And if you know someone who loves movies and loves to debate, share this episode with them.
I think it is more nuanced than just cynicism. He is tapping into this larger anxiety about content overload, what some call the paradox of choice. He even shares this anecdote about a shoe seller who found success by limiting customer options, the idea being that too much choice can be paralyzing.
Right.
And it is happening with content, too. We are overwhelmed, constantly bombarded with new releases, and it can affect how we engage with art. Do we savor it, or do we just consume and move on to the next thing?
Right. And he even compares this to vampires retreating into the shadows, overwhelmed by this constant barrage of information and entertainment. Wow. But jokes aside, there is a real point here. This kind of leads us to Kashyap's own decision to take a break from filmmaking.
Oh, yeah.
He talks about needing to recharge, to feed his soul, to find a sense of peace and creative autonomy amidst the chaos.
Which is fascinating because it speaks to this larger question of sustainability in the creative field. How do you maintain your artistic integrity, your passion in this constantly evolving and increasingly demanding landscape?
Right. How do you avoid becoming a cog in the machine, churning out content just to keep up with the algorithm?
Exactly.
And Kashyap seems to be grappling with that very question. He reflects on his own career, from his early ambition to create a filmmaking community to his current desire for a simpler, more focused approach. It is as if he is saying, I have proven myself now, I need to rediscover why I do this in the first place.
I like that.
Right.
Yeah.
And he uses Candid, his latest film, as an example. He has deliberately detached himself from the project because he does not want it to become a source of frustration or negativity. He is choosing to focus his energy on projects that are creatively fulfilling, which is a powerful statement in itself.
Yeah, it really is.
That is a great place to pause for now. We have covered a lot of ground, from Kashyap's early influences to his disillusionment with Bollywood, his admiration for South Indian cinema, and his personal journey of self-discovery. But there is so much more to unpack, including his views on corporate influence in filmmaking and the changing landscape of audience taste. We will be back in a moment to delve deeper into those topics, so do not go anywhere. In the meantime, tell us what resonates with you so far. Do you agree with Kashyap's assessment of the film industry? Have you experienced this content overload that he describes? Hit us with your other opinions in the comments below, and do not forget to hit that like button and subscribe to The Other Opinion for more deep dives like this. We will be right back.
Yeah, it is interesting how he frames that detachment from Kennedy. Like, it is not about giving up, it is about protecting his creative energy.
Right. It is a conscious choice to prioritize fulfillment over potential frustration. And, he is not holding back on his criticism of the forces that he sees as shaping the industry. He straight up calls corporate influence in filmmaking a monster. Like, once that investment comes in, the focus shifts to quick returns and not nurturing art.
And that short-sightedness can definitely stifle originality. He talks about how directors get caught in this trap of replicating their past successes, becoming more like caterers than chefs.
Oh, interesting. Serving up what is familiar instead of experimenting with new flavors, new ingredients.
Right, exactly. They're playing it safe, catering to perceived expectations instead of pushing boundaries.
Losing their voice in the process.
Exactly. They lose their own voice, becoming afraid to take risks, to challenge conventions.
And speaking of risks, Kashyap has certainly taken his fair share. 5 unreleased films that has got to sting. What do you make of that situation? His film Kennedy was well received at Cannes, and yet it is still unreleased. What is going on there?
Well, it highlights the disconnect between critical acclaim and commercial viability. He points out that the people now in charge of these projects are often driven purely by profits, not artistic merit.
So we're seeing this gap between what audiences respond to at festivals like Cannes and what the industry is willing to put out there. Do you think that is a fair assessment? Let us know in the comments below. And if you're enjoying this deep dive into Anurag Kashyap's perspective, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to The Other Opinion for more insightful conversations like this one. Share it with your film buff friends too. Let's get this conversation going.
He even uses the example of Pushpa, The Rise, which was a massive commercial success, and he argues that the Hindi film industry would not even know how to make a film like that because they've lost touch with that raw, visceral storytelling.
He keeps circling back to this idea of South Indian cinema being more connected to its roots, while Bollywood has lost its way. It is almost like he sees a purity there that has been corrupted by the commercial machine.
Right. There's a certain honesty to their filmmaking, a rawness that audiences crave. It is about characters, about stories that resonate on a deeper level.
And he talks about how in Kerala, every film has an equal chance because the audience is open to new experiences. They are not beholden to star power or formulaic narratives.
It is refreshing, isn't it?
Yeah.
It allows for a more diverse range of stories to be told, for new voices to emerge.
And he even highlights Mammootty, who is this huge star in Malayalam cinema, who is known for taking on really challenging roles, constantly pushing himself creatively. Can you imagine that in Bollywood?
Right.
Like, it is almost unthinkable for a major star to take on a role where they are not the central focus, where they're part of an ensemble.
It is all about ego, about maintaining that star image.
Kashyap really nails this point. The system seems designed to perpetuate itself, to keep the same people in power and to keep churning out the same kind of content. But what about the audience? Are they not also complicit in this system?
Well, it is a classic chicken or egg situation. Audiences are fed a certain kind of content, and over time, their tastes are shaped by what is available.
It is like fast food versus a gourmet meal. You might crave that comfort of the familiar, but eventually you realize you're missing out on something more substantial, more nourishing.
And that is what Kashyap is trying to do, to shake things up, to challenge the status quo. He talks about wanting to go back to basics, to make films that he enjoys making, to work with people who share his vision.
That brings us to this point he makes about the fatigue he is feeling, not just as a filmmaker, but as a viewer. He talks about being overwhelmed by the sheer volume of content available, unable to keep up with it all.
Yeah, it is a sentiment many of us can relate to. We are bombarded with choices, and it can be paralyzing.
He even jokes about how we're all becoming vampires, retreating into the shadows, overwhelmed by the constant barrage of information and entertainment. But behind the humor lies a serious point. How do we navigate this content overload? How do we reclaim our agency as viewers?
His solution is surprisingly simple. Watch at your own pace. Do not get caught up in the hype, the pressure to consume everything. Take your time, savor the experience, and rediscover the joy of discovery.
It is about finding those hidden gems that truly resonate with you, stepping back from the noise and reconnecting with what truly matters. And that is a message worth reflecting on. We live in a world of endless options, but true fulfillment comes from making conscious choices, from curating our own experiences. What do you think? How do you deal with content overload? Let us know in the comments below. And while you are there, hit that like button and subscribe to The Other Opinion for more thought-provoking discussions like this one.
It is about remembering that we have the power to shape our own media landscape, to choose quality over quantity. We are not just passive consumers, we are active participants.
Exactly. And that is what makes Anurag Kashyap such a compelling figure. He's not afraid to challenge the status quo, to speak his truth, and to inspire us to think differently about the art that we consume. But we want to hear your thoughts, too. What resonated with you in this conversation? Do you agree with Kashyap's perspective? Share your other opinions in the comments below. Hit that like button, subscribe to The Other Opinion, and tell your friends about this channel. We will be right back to wrap up this deep dive into Anurag Kashyap's world. All right, so we've talked about Kashyap's disillusionment with Bollywood, his admiration for South Indian cinema, and his personal need to step back and recharge. But what does this all mean for the future of filmmaking? Where do we go from here?
That is a big question, right? I mean, Kashyap seems to believe that the current corporate-driven system is unsustainable. Like, it is churning out formulaic content, alienating audiences, and ultimately headed for a collapse.
Like a bubble that is about to burst. But what emerges from those ashes? What does a post-bubble film industry look like?
Right. It is so interesting to think about, will independent cinema reclaim its space? Will we see a return to more authentic, character-driven stories? Or will something entirely new take shape, something we have not even imagined yet?
I mean, it is fascinating to consider all the possibilities, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're at this crossroads not just in Indian cinema, but in global cinema. The rise of streaming platforms, the changing consumption habits, the influence of social media, it is all contributing to a seismic shift in the way we create and consume art.
Yeah, and it is up to artists like Kashyap to push the boundaries, to challenge the norms, and to pave the way for a new era of filmmaking.
And he certainly is not afraid to speak his mind, to call out hypocrisy and short-sightedness. Whether you agree with him or not, his perspective is invaluable. It forces us to confront these uncomfortable truths, to question our own assumptions, and to think critically about the future of cinema.
Totally. He reminds us that filmmaking is not just about entertainment. It is about art. It is about storytelling. It is about connecting with audiences on a deeper level.
It is about passion. It is about vision. It is about staying true to yourself even when the world around you is telling you to conform.
Absolutely. It is about finding your voice and using it to tell stories that matter.
Exactly. And that is what makes Anurag Kashyap such a vital figure in Indian cinema. He is a disruptor, he is a provocateur, and above all, he is a passionate artist who is not afraid to fight for what he believes in.
Definitely. He is a reminder that even in the darkest of times, there is always hope for something new, something better, something that pushes the boundaries of what is possible.
Absolutely. And on that note, we want to hear from you. What are your thoughts on the future of filmmaking? Are you optimistic? Pessimistic? Somewhere in between? Let us know in the comments below. And do not forget to hit that like button and subscribe to our channel, The Other Opinion, for more deep dives into fascinating topics like this. And hey, if you really enjoyed this episode, why not share it with your friends and family? Spread the word and let us keep the conversation going.
Always remember, there's always another perspective, another opinion waiting to be explored. That is what we are all about here at The Other Opinion.
And before we sign off, we just wanted to let you know that this episode was created using AI. We're using this technology to bring you insightful content in a fun and engaging way. But, like with anything AI-related, it is important to remember that some information might be incorrect or incomplete. So we always encourage you to do your own research and to seek out diverse perspectives.
Yes, critical thinking is so important now more than ever in this age of information overload.
Absolutely. Do not just take our word for it. Go out there, explore, question, and form your own opinions. And let us continue this conversation in the comments below.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of Anurag Kashyap and Indian cinema. Until next time, keep exploring those other opinions.
See you in the next one.